Fantastic. Okay, I believe the recording has now started. So welcome each and every one of you to the second lecture for business functions. If you recall, we finished up last session looking at the nature of a business. We looked at the legal structure. We also touched upon the value proposition and the business model content as to how that has to align in order for the business to deliver value to its final customer. Okay, so what is the value proposition? Those were some of the concepts that we explored in the very first lecture. So we're going to build on that this afternoon and take that forward. So today's session is all about understanding competition, understanding our competitor, and also understand what that means for markets and marketing. So really, there's a few different models that can be used for us to understand or to try to analyze how a market works and why certain markets are more successful than others. And lots of that starts from understanding the competition and what competition looks like. So Porter's 5 Forces is a model developed by Michael E. Porter. He actually developed this as part of... Sorry, someone's just joined the call. Could you please make sure you're in mute, please? Thank you. So developed by Michael Porter in his PhD thesis, and he introduced 5 forces that he thought were important in influencing or impacting on the competitive rivalry between organizations. Okay, so we'll understand Porter's 5 forces and why that's important. We will also do what's called a competitor analysis, and we'll try to understand who the competition is in the market and why we need to be aware of them. And finally, ignore the 2 weeks. This is something I did for a previous class. But in today's session, we'll also focus on target markets, and we'll look at the whole idea of adding value. So if you recall, yesterday, we looked at how to add value, what the value proposition is. So this time we're going to take that forward and understand, well, how do you reach your customers? How do you make sure that you're providing that value to your customers? So it's one thing to say, here is our value proposition, but it's another thing altogether to deliver on that, okay? So delivering on the value proposition is something we need to talk about, and that's something we will do later this afternoon. So that is the session structure. So firstly, competition or competitors. Now I've intentionally included pictures here of cars or toy cars, as the case is may be, but the motor vehicle industry is probably one of the most competitive industries that are known to the world at this moment in time. If you think about a number of car brands that exist, both economy models, luxury models, premium models, there's a number of different organizations that are competing for a similar market share. If you look at small cars, you've got the likes of Ford, you have Renault, you have Peugeot, you have Citroën. All these brands are aiming to tackle that kind of everyday customer who can afford, a good size or a small size family car. You then have the premium cars. You've got BMW, Mercedes, Audi, some people say Porsche. These brands, Volkswagen, they are all competing for a particular type of customer, the kind of working class customer or the middle class customer who can afford a little bit more luxury. You then have the high end luxurious brands, likes of Rolls-Royce, Bentley, Ferrari, Lamborghini. They're very much targeting the top end of the market, okay? They're not going to target the working class population because they know that the working class can't afford to drive a Ferrari or can't afford to drive a Rolls-Royce. So again, each and every market segment is catered for by different brands, and there's a lot of competition, okay? If you have a lot of money and you just won the lottery, there's a number of different brands you could look to buy from. You could buy a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, a McLaren. You could look at Rolls-Royce, you could look at Bentley, all these different luxury car brands that exist in that market space. So competition is important. We need to understand who our competition are, who are they aiming to target to. So for example, if you are a car producer producing small Ford Fiestas, obviously Ferrari is not going to be your competition because people that buy a Ford Fiesta are realistically not going to be able to afford a Ferrari. And similarly, people that can afford a Ferrari, it's very, very unlikely that they would want to buy a smaller, cheap car like a Ford Fiesta, okay? So just understanding your competition, understanding who they're targeting, and understanding how they're operating can affect you and affect your business. So that's what we're going to look at today. So first of all, every single business has competition. In fact, not even businesses, every single person has competition. What does that mean? Well, when you're going for a job, realistically, you're probably not the only candidate. Sorry, can I just ask whoever that is to go into mute, please? Thank you. Everyone has competition, okay? When you apply for a job, there's going to be other candidates. Those other candidates are your competition for that job. When you're applying to go to university or you're applying to go to further studies, there's going to be other students that are also applying. They'll be competing against you to try and get a space in that university. So these are all things that affect how you behave, how you conduct what your everyday business, okay? So competition is something that exists not only in business, but can exist in everyday life. If you as an organization believe that you have no competition, or you believe that you have no competitors, then the likelihood is that you probably haven't defined your idea properly, or your idea is so poor that no one's actually bothered to address it. So for example, there are some really weird products that you just think to yourself, I would never buy this. If you started selling those products, then realistically the market may not demand it. So it might be a poor idea, therefore no one's doing it. That might be one reason. Or what is most likely is you haven't done your homework. You haven't done research. You haven't actually understood the market. You might think there's no one else out there providing your product, but if you do a little bit of research, you do some digging, you will find if your product is a good product or a useful product, somebody somewhere is providing a similar service. Perhaps they're not well developed, perhaps they're not well known, but there will be someone out there providing that product, okay? So everyone has competition. What does that mean for us in business studies? Well, it means that we need to make sure that we can do things such as competitor analysis. We need to be able to raise awareness of who our customers are. And that's a fundamental component of what we can do to drive our business enterprise forward. So let's now introduce a model that you can maybe use to try and understand competitive rivalry or competition within a market or within an industry. So Michael Porter's 5 forces, those of threat of new entrants, bargaining power of customers, which is also known as buying power, bargaining power of suppliers, also known as supplier power, threat of substitute products, and finally the middle component, which is competitive rivalry within the industry. Now, usually this is used as what's called a decision-making tool. If you're looking to enter a new market, or if you're looking to enter a different area, a different industry, it's useful for you to conduct what's called Porter's 5 forces analysis. Why? Because you want to understand how easy is it for you to enter the market. So threat of new entrants is a big one. How easy is it for other people to come into the market? Is it, you know, a market which has got high barriers to entry, or is it low barriers to entry? What do I mean by barriers? Well, things like how competitive is that market? Is it a monopoly situation where 1 or 2 firms dominate? So for example, if you're looking at a fizzy drinks market, no matter how good your fizzy drink may be, realistically, you're not going to be able to compete with the likes of Coca-Cola or Pepsi. They've got large economies of scale. They can produce products a fraction of the price that you can. They've already got an existing customer base. They've got a market presence across the globe. They can access billions of people. So again, some markets have more higher barriers to entry than others. Then you have the bargaining power of customers. What does that mean? Well, that means, what about your customers? How many options do they have in the market? So again, if your customers have got multiple options, then realistically, they're going to be quite picky and quite choosy. They're going to want to choose the product that gives them the most value, whether that be price, whether that be quality of product, whether that be the function or utility, etc., etc. Okay, so customers, where they have more choice, are likely to have more power because they can easily go to a substitute product. And that leads me to the next point. What the threat of substitute products? So what do you mean by a substitute? A substitute is something that can be consumed in place of your product. So for example, Say you are selling tomato ketchup or tomato ketchup sauce. One of your customers might be a little bit indifferent between tomato ketchup and mayonnaise, or tomato ketchup and barbecue sauce, etc. So if you start producing tomato ketchup at a higher price, or if you start producing a different style of tomato ketchup that perhaps your customer doesn't like, then he or she might substitute the tomato ketchup for something else, such as mayonnaise, such as barbecue sauce, such as HP brown sauce. So there's lots of different options available to that customer. So again, threat of substitute products can influence how competitive your marketplace may be. The final one on the outside is bargaining power of suppliers. What does that mean? Well, again, how much power do your suppliers have? So how do suppliers have power? Well, if the raw materials that you use for your product are only available from one company, so it's only one supplier that you know of that produces the raw material that you require to produce your products, then you could say that he or she, that supplier, has a position of power. They have high power in the supplier bargaining power matrix. Why? Because they are then able to control the price. They know that they're the only ones that supply the raw material. They know that you've got nowhere else to go. In order to produce your product, you have to buy the raw material from them. So what are they going to do? Well, they have the ability to be able to raise prices. They might say, okay, someone else is willing to pay us more. We're going to sell to them. We're not going to sell to you anymore because you're paying us a lower price. So again, bargaining power of suppliers is quite important. However, similarly, if you have lots of options, there are a number of suppliers that can provide the raw materials or the components that you need, then instead it's you as a business who has the power, not the supplier, okay? Because you've got more options to choose from now. And the combination of these four can contribute to the middle component, which is the competitive rivalry within an industry. What do you mean by that? So it's about how do firms compete in that market? Again, it's about looking at existing relationships between competition. So are they directly at each other's throats? So for example, take Apple and Samsung. Very, very recently, Apple and Samsung were in a bitter legal pursuit. Apple accused Samsung of copying their user interface and copying their phone design. And it was very recently resolved in a high US court. And I believe Samsung did pay a small amount of damage to Apple, but the punishment was a lot less severe than what Apple were seeking. So again, in some industries, the rivalry can be very intense. There can be companies suing each other, companies taking each other to court because they want to protect their intellectual property. They want to protect their market share. But how would you use this? Well, what you would do is you would score each of these on a ranking between 1 to 5. So if it's high, you could give it a 5. If it's low, you could give it a 1. And you could give any score in between. Ideally, you want to focus on the scores that are below 3. Why do you want to do that? Because if the score is less than 3, which means your average will be 15 or less, then it might be an attractive market, okay? The threat of entrance will be low, bargaining power of customers is low, bargaining power of suppliers is low, threat of substitute is low, and competitive rivalry is low. It means it's a very attractive market. However, if on the other side, the flip side, your score is high, it's 20 plus, well, then it might be a good time to exit that market because the nature or the state of that market might not be attractive. It might be difficult for you to really do your business, to really grow your market share, okay? So that's how you can use Porter's 5 forces. What about examples then of competition? So I've talked about competition, but let me give you some. Well, there are rivals, and some of the rivals that you can think of are perhaps, if you look at the taxi sharing industry or taxi sharing apps, Jump-In has joined the market, which allows you to share a taxi with almost a stranger. But say you're on a night out and you and somebody else are going back to the same town or the same city, then why would you get individual taxis? Why would you not just share? And then you can split the bill. So these are rivals or competition for traditional apps such as Uber, such as ride-sharing apps such as Didi in China, for example. So there's lots of different apps with lots of different competition for taxi sharing. Salt and Pepper is something new to a dating app site. So again, traditional dating apps such as Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, but you've got Salt and Pepper. Now, Salt and Pepper is designed specifically to be slightly different than traditional dating apps, is designed to provide more mystique, shall we say, to a dating process, where you shake your phone to identify a potential match. Now, he or she may not be a match, but the idea is it's a different way of dating. It's not about swiping left or right, it's about shaking, hence the salt and pepper name. We also have what we call social media consultancies nowadays. So you have companies that are willing to take on your social media job. So Calls9 is a company based in the Leeds in the United Kingdom. And they provide a specific service whereby they offer to take on the social media part of a business's media marketing campaign. So no longer are you reliant on your own in-house marketing team. You can now outsource certain components of your social media strategy or your social media approach to third parties such as Calls9. What about new entrants? Well, new entrants are usually either completely new firms, like ones that didn't exist. So new startup firms. If you think about the banking industry, there's been companies such as Monzo or Starling. These are the new fintech banks that didn't exist 5-10 years ago. All of a sudden, they've hit the scene and they're massive now. They're becoming more streamlined. They're making it easier for customers to bank. Or they could be established firms that move into another patch. So, for example, Tesco, the UK greengrocer, UK supermarket that provides foods, they've moved into the banking industry. So Tesco have got their own bank. Or a taxi firm maybe that's designed or developed a ride-sharing app. So Jump In was originally just taxi-based, but they identified a gap in the market for sharing taxis to split the bill, to allow you to share the bill with other people going to a similar destination as you. So again, these are all ideas that are either new completely, as in they never existed before, or they're new because existing companies have changed their product portfolio, they've adapted, they've grown their product portfolio, okay? Substitutes, what do you mean by substitute? So substitute is basically other ways of fulfilling the customer's needs. So what do you mean? Well, what about taxis instead of walking or getting the bus or getting the train? So these are substitute ways. You might want to go to the local city. You could walk to the city in 1 hour. You could take a taxi, it'll get you there in 15 minutes or 10 minutes. You could take the bus, it'll get you there in 20 minutes. Or you could take the train, it'll get you there in 5 minutes. So again, there's lots of different options, okay? Lots of substitutes for how you want to travel. And again, there's an example there with Jump In from Google, which is also all about taxi company adverts, etc., etc. Okay, so substitute is all about different ways in which you can achieve the same end goal. So what's the difference between market and industry? Well, we tend to use these terms interoperability. So we tend to use them to mean one another essentially, but that's not necessarily true. Strictly speaking, market and industry are two completely different things. A market is something that consists of buyers, okay? So a market will have people that are willing to buy products, either existing customers or potential future customers. When you talk about a market, you're focusing on the people that are buying. Where are the buyers? Where's the customers? However, the industry is actually different. Industry is made up of sellers, okay? So when we talk about industry, we're talking about the organizations, the businesses, the firms that are providing the products and services that are similar to one another, okay? So this is your large organizations that sell food products. So Coca-Cola, this is Pepsi, this is Nestle, this is Dairy Milk, Cadbury's. These brands, okay, they are selling products. They're offering goods and services. They are industry. Markets are where the buyers exist, okay? So where you and I, so if you're looking at a supermarket, we are all part of the market for supermarkets. In order for them to sell their products and services, they will reach out to markets such as ourselves. We form the markets that they sell to, okay? So that's something I want you to be aware of, particularly for your assignment. Please don't get confused. Markets are different to industries. Markets are all about the buyers, the customers, and industry is all about the sellers, the organizations that are making and selling the products. So if we look at market firstly, then, well, what makes a market attractive? If you were an organization, if you were Apple or you were Samsung, what would make a market attractive to you? Well, firstly, you want to look at the size of the market. How large is that market? And how do you measure the size? Well, you look at things such as number of customers. So how many customers do you have? You look at the money that's spent by the customers on products and services. So how much money are people spending on consuming the products and services that you make? And finally, you would look at a number of units of relevant products being sold already. So again, take, for example, a new mobile phone company. So if you're looking to produce mobile phones, you might want to look into the market to see, well, how many sales of mobile phones are there for this type of phone? So you've got a particular technology or you've got a particular design. You want to compare how many sales there are for your type of phone. How many people are buying a phone that resembles what yours does? It's got similar technology, similar specifications, similar dimensions, okay? So you want to look at the size of the market. Also, chances are, if you're expanding into new markets, then you'll probably have some capital behind you. That may be in the form of investors, or it may be in the form of what's called venture capitalists, people that invested in your business to see it grow. And what do they care about? Well, they care about the size and the rate of growth. If you're entering new markets and you borrowed money from the bank wants to know, well, what's the size of the market you're entering? How fast is that market growing? Is it growing? Is it stagnating? They want to understand the nature of the market that you're going to be investing in before they give you money. They also want to understand the market potential. So again, are you investing in what's known as a dead market? So for example, right now, DVDs are going out of fashion. Nobody wants to buy DVDs because you can stream all the content online. So if you were setting up a new business to sell DVDs, then probably not very many capitalists or banks or investors will want to give you funding because they know that the DVD industry is dying. No one is buying DVDs anymore because they can stream the content online, okay? So these are all things to be aware of when you come to making decisions about market attractiveness. And finally, how robust is the market? What do you mean by robust? Well, how does it recover? How does it cope with perhaps negative occurrences or perhaps dangerous occurrences that cause the market to fail? So for example, take the banking crisis of 2008, the financial crisis when a lot of the global economy went into recession. Again, what markets were recovering well? These are the markets people want to invest in. And at the time, it was technology. The likes of Amazon were growing, the likes of eBay, Google. These organizations are becoming super powerhouses. So again, it's about understanding the nature of the market. Is the market growing? Is the market stagnating? Is the market declining or dying? So that's looking at attractiveness of markets. Next up, we want to look at what's called competitor analysis. So competitor analysis is all about understanding your competition and what are the tools that you can use to do just that. So competitor analysis or competitor benchmarking is a tool that's used to determine who has competitive advantage with respect to customer needs. So what are customer needs? Remember, customer needs and wants are those elements that we're looking to fulfill. We want to be able to meet the needs of our customers. And how are we going to do that? By fulfilling their wants, fulfilling what they can't have, fulfilling what they don't have access to. It can be done at the business level, or it can be done with respect to specific customer segments. So that means you can either do that at collective enterprise level. So as a whole business, you can design or you can try to meet those needs, or you can do it as a specific customer grouping. So a specific customer segment. And finally, in either case, it requires research, data, and judgment, okay? In order to deliver what your customers require, you will likely have to research what's going on. You likely have to understand what's impacting your customers, what's important to your customers, what do you need to do to be able to fulfill their needs. So how do you do that? Well, The first stage in any of that process is to determine a series of criteria against which we can compare customer perceptions. So that basically means we're looking to understand, how do we compare what customers want? How do we understand what customers want from us? And how do we deliver what customers are looking for? Now, that can be done from standard factors such as quality, price, customer service. So you can look at these measures or these performance indicators that might show you how the business is performing. It could also be done through relevant sector-related factors such as delivery time. So in manufacturing, what's really important is lead time or delivery time. How quickly can you get the raw materials into your warehouse? How quickly can you deliver from your warehouse to your customer? So delivery time or lead time is quite important in manufacturing. Similarly, in retail, it's all about having a range of products, giving your customer options. Or in IT services, it's all about uptime. So uptime means how much time you can give your customers or your people that you sell your IT products to in terms of software running. How long will software continue to run for? So uptime is what they're interested in. If we look at customer needs in particular, then we want to be able to review the websites of the businesses and the competitors as a useful way to identify the factors. So what do I mean by that? Well, what are the factors you want to explore? What is important to your customers? One of the best ways to do that is to review the websites of the business and the competition to identify those factors. So customers leave reviews. You should go on the customer reviews on your competition's website and understand, what do customers like about their products? What are customers saying about their products that they appreciate the most, that they want to buy the most? Okay, so that's something that you want to be able to identify. It's something you want to be able to take advantage of. So you want to see what they're doing well. Similarly, you want to understand the criteria that these websites focus on. Okay, so what is their focus? Where do they design their business offering? How do they position their business value proposition? What is their USP, the unique selling point? How do they market to their customers? What are the value propositions, as I've said already? So again, you want to understand, what do they do to reach the customer base? How do they do that? Which of those channels are successful? Which of them lead to them getting responses? Which of them lead to them generating revenue for their business? Okay, so it's quite an important part, that understanding what the customer needs are. Oh, I think I've skipped a slide there, sorry. We then have to weight customer needs. So what do you mean by weighting? Well, weighting is generating a list of criteria, usually between 6 to 8 items. And what we do with that is we would weight it based on how important something is to the customer. So is it the cost that's important? Is it the features that are important? Is it the quality of the product? Is it the fact that it's maybe using sustainable materials, such as is it recyclable product? What's the environmental impact of producing that product? Is it consuming raw materials that are limited, so natural resources? So again, these are all things that customers care about. They want to know what they're buying. So you want to generate a list of those criteria that your customers care most about. Once you've done that, you want to be able to gather data on how to assess those weightings based on your customer feedback. So again, how will you know how the business is performing based on customer feedback? You need to be able to develop usually a scale between 1 to 5 or maybe 1 to 10, and you would give a score to each of those criteria. How can you get that feedback? Well, you can do direct customer surveys. So you can ask clients to rank the importance of these criteria. So for example, you maybe have a mailing list, and you've got customers that subscribe to your mailing list. So you can reach out to them and you can ask them for their opinion. You can ask them to rank the criteria. Alternatively, you might want to research the customer behavior. How would you do that? Well, you would analyze customer and social media sites. You would review what reviews are already there. You would be looking at the criteria to make sure that it's accurate and it reflects what customers want. Potentially, you could also gather data from your sales staff. Why? Because your sales staff are the ones that are facing the customers on a daily basis. They're speaking to the customers, they're selling to the customers. So they're able to capture information firsthand from your customer. They're able to understand from your customer what he or she wants. So again, they can help support you in understanding and weighting your customer needs. So once you've weighted them, the final stage in the process is to rate the performance. So how do you rate the performance? Well, once your criteria has been selected and weighted, you need to then start beginning to think about how do you compare the performance of your business with your competition. Now, ratings can be generated directly from the customer feedback. So you could base the rating on what your customers are saying. You could do it via feedback from your sales staff. So you could ask your workers, okay, tell me about what we do well, what we don't do well. Tell me what other people in the industry are doing better than us. So again, you could ask your customers, you could ask your staff. You could ask a third-party company to do that using publicly available information. So again, there's research houses. There are actually organizations or businesses that exist that are happy to do that activity for you. They will research the industry, they will understand what customers want, and they will look at things like the company websites, they will look at annual reports, and they will try to decipher how well a business is performing compared to yours. So you could do that. Once you've done that, well, really it's all about having as much data as possible. The more data you have, the more accurate or the more informed your competitor map will be. However, what you need to know is that's never going to be 100% accurate. And the reason for that is, well, nobody wants to share their secret private information. If your business is performing very poorly, yes, your accounts might show poor performance, but they won't show the extent of poor performance. That's something that only you will know internally to your business. And the likelihood of you wanting to publish that or tell anyone is very, very low. So similarly, your competition will be the exact same. Whilst yes, from their accounts information, you can understand how they performed, but it doesn't give you the full picture, okay? So something to be aware of. Competitor mapping or competitor analysis is a good exercise because it allows you to position or benchmark the performance of your business compared to your competition, but it should always be taken with a pinch of salt because it's never going to be 100% accurate and 100% reliable. So again, one of the drawbacks of these types of exercises is you're restricted to the information that's publicly available. Unless you know someone or you have someone on the inside working at your competition and they're able to share high-level details, there's no way for you to know the exact performance of your competition when you're comparing it to your own business performance. But why do we want to do that? You're probably sitting there thinking, we talked a lot about competition, we talked about ways in which we can measure competitiveness, ways in which we can understand how we're performing compared to our competition. Why is that important? Well, simply it comes down to two words, and that's competitive advantage. You want to be able to identify what sources of competitive advantage exist, either for you or potentially for your competition that you might want to adopt or you might want to borrow into your own business. So what is competitive advantage? Well, basically, we find that where the score against any given criteria exceeds our competition score. So what is the competitive advantage of our business? One way in which we can identify that is by comparing our scores to the scores given to our competitors. And we can say, okay, we scored better for price, or we scored better for cost. We maybe scored better for customer service. So again, you can identify where your business performs better than your competition. Unfortunately, the opposite is also true. You're also able to identify where your performance lags behind, or where your performance as a business is poor compared to your competition. So you can identify areas for improvement. The most important areas are where the advantage is held in relation to the criteria with the highest weighting. What do you mean by that? Well, if in the market, customers value the quality of the product more than anything else, so they don't care about cost as much, they don't care about customer service as much, they don't care about sustainability or anything, they care about the quality of the product. If you have a better score for quality compared to your competition, then that's a significant area of competitive advantage, okay? because that's the highest weighted criteria. Whereas, say for example, customer service, or no, say for example, sustainability wasn't very well regarded by customers. It's not an important area. It doesn't really influence their decision making. If you held competitive advantage, if you had the best score in sustainability, that may or may not actually result in you generating any more or less sales. It might just mean that, yes, you're doing better than everyone else, but it's not that important because the market doesn't really care about that component. They care more about price, they care more about costs, they care more about customer service or other areas. Okay, so you want to identify ideally competitive advantage in an area that has the highest weighting, the area that's valued the most by your customers. You can then either just focus on 3 or 4 of the most weighted criteria, or you can multiply the weighting score by the difference in performance ratings to achieve an overall weighted competitive advantage. Now, that sounds a little bit complicated. Most companies will focus on just those 3 or 4 areas of weighted criteria that have been identified as being the most important, either because they have existing competitive advantage or because they're areas in which your competition are doing well and you want to be able to perform better in those areas. Okay, so that's what competitive advantage is all about. But we don't just stop there, because we need to also understand, well, how do we assess competitive advantage? How do we compare our performance to that of our competitors? And how do we understand whether or not we truly have competitive advantage compared to our industry, compared to other people that are operating in our space? Well, with respect to each criteria, whoever has the highest score can be said to have competitive advantage in that respective criteria. However, overall, that advantage may actually be determined by assessing who has the overall higher scores across all the criteria. So again, you might be very, very good at the price. You can make your product cheaper than everyone else, and therefore you sell it for cheaper. So you've got a price advantage. However, the quality of your product might be poor. It might be the worst product out of all of the available substitutes. Your customer service might be rubbish. You don't have a customer service function. You don't really care about the customer once they bought the product. The sustainability of your product might not be very strong. You might be using products that can't be recycled, or you might be using products that consume a lot of natural resources. Again, that can impact the overall attractiveness of your business. So being good at one thing doesn't necessarily mean you've got overall competitive advantage. Overall competitive advantage can come from people that maybe are second place in each of the criteria, but when you combine all of the criteria, they come out on top. So again, just be careful when we say having the best score is good. Yes, it is, but similarly, having the best score in only one criteria, then being the worst in every other one, isn't actually competitive advantage. It can actually lead to what's called competitive disadvantage, whereby you focus too much on one area that you've neglected the other areas that are important to your customers. Also, you need to note the areas where the scores are substantially different between your business and your competition. Why? Because generally speaking, it's more desirable to have clear leads, but this can also mean sometimes highlighting over-servicing. So again, yes, it is good to have a clear lead. It's good to be out front better than everyone else, but sometimes that can result in you over-servicing the market. Do your customers really want all this extra customer service, or are you just providing that at additional cost? That's yes, it's nice to have, but maybe your customers don't actually care all that much. Maybe they would still buy from you even if you never had that. So again, what you don't want to do is be doing something that's called over-servicing, whereby you're going above and beyond, but you're not actually realizing any better returns. And I've given you an example there. So for example, if the business scores much higher against a product range than a competitor, then it may be that the business could afford to reduce their range ever so slightly, and it would still keep competitive advantage. So again, you don't know the extent to which you hold competitive advantage maybe by reducing your product range by 1 or 2 products, you might still have competitive advantage. So again, what you don't want to be doing is spending more money providing additional products or services that may or may not otherwise be required. Right, I've got a small task for you, which I think will be useful for you to do, for you to understand how to map your competition. So what I want you to do is, I want you to use the competitor map we just discussed. I want you to identify 2 or more businesses, preferably 2, and compare them, treat them as competition. Use criteria. I want you to identify between 4 and 6 different criteria that's essential to the market. So again, it could be brands that you shop from, and think about what's important to you, what the criteria that you most desire, and then rate those businesses based on that criteria. Give them a weight. So which is more important? Is it the price? So for example, say you've got 4 criteria. The 4 are price, quality, customer service, and sustainability. You might regard cost as being 50% important. You might regard quality as being 40% important. You might regard sustainability as only being 2% and customer service as being 8%. So those are the weightings, okay? So I want you to give them weightings, and then I want you to give them a score from 0 to 10. So for each of those criteria, I want you to score the 2 companies you've chosen based on how well you think they perform in those criteria. And then I want you to tell me who has the advantage by multiplying the score by the weight, okay? Try and be honest and realistic. So, you know, try and base it on the true performance of that brand. Please don't just make up numbers. Try and think about how that brand performs. You may realize that you need more information to complete that. That's absolutely fine. I mean, you don't know these businesses inside out. You just know them based on how you purchase from them. But that's fine. That can be a good prompt for you to do more research. If you were looking to do that in future, you would then do more research. But for the time being, over the next 10 to 15 minutes, if I could ask you to do a competitor map, we're also going to take a 10-15 minute break. So during that break, I want you to do this task. And then we will resume in 15 minutes, and I want to hear from you. Who have you compared, and who holds competitive advantage in the industry that you've chosen? Everyone clear on what they have to do? Yeah?
Yes.
Perfect. I'll leave you to it then, Felix. If you could do that for me, that would be great. And yes, we'll get together in the next 10 to 15 minutes, okay?
Can you just highlight, just give me a bit of highlight in terms of the weighting? You suggested some numbers there. I just want to get the percentage.
It's completely up to you how you want to weight it. It just depends on what industry you choose. So for example, you might feel that the price is more important. So you might want to give the price maybe 50% weight. So you know how much the thing costs, the price, that might be more important. Or you might think the quality of the product is more important, but ideally your weighting should only add up to 100%, okay? Don't make your weighting go above 100% across all of them. So combined, everything should add up to 100%. Okay, so for example, you might say price is 50%, quality is 30%, sustainability is 10%, and customer service is 10%, okay? So it's up to you how you want to do that. But I want you to identify some of the key criteria based on the product or the industry you've chosen, and I want you to score them, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Felix. So yes, 10-15 minutes and we'll get back together. Thank you, guys.
Okay. I looked at two I actually look at 2 organizations.
Fantastic.
I look at the McDonald's, the franchise here in South Africa.
Okay.
And I also look at the KFC. I'm sure you have it there. You have it on, I'm not sure if you have it in the UK.
KFC,
but KFC. Yes, okay. So I look at the 2 as part, and then I assume that I'm a company and I have my own organization that will want to come in. But
perfect.
I also assume that I have some knowledge of the market in South Africa.
Yep.
And I was just looking at, so I rated some of these in this point: the price, the quality, the sustainability, and customer services. I rated them in terms of the criteria there, in terms of the metrics there that you have from 0 to 10 for each of them. But I do have an overall, I'm not sure if I did the right thing. I do have an overall rating in terms of percentages for the price, quality, and sustainability and customer service. That is overall, before rating them individually for each company.
No, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Great. So if you could just talk me through the criteria that you used. So what criteria did you identify that was important to the market?
I look at, for example, with KFC under quality, for example, they talk about allergens in terms of allergy and how they've taken steps to indicate on their websites that if this food may cause allergy and all of those information, and try to put, and they also included information on calculation of your calories, and with the South African context, in terms of price, you get something that can fill your stomach, especially for people who are living at the lower end of the economy. So they will probably, when they leave work, they'll tend to go there to get food. So McDonald's is slightly upper class in a way,
Okay.
So I would imagine that, given that South Africa is relatively a developing economy, one would assume that the price will be an important metrics. So I give more for KFC in terms of price, and I also give more in terms of the information that they provided on the website for in terms of the calories and all those information that they provided to customers. So I gave 8 for KFC, 8 for the quality. And then for sustainability, I see all of them have the same, all of them talk about their values and working with the communities and trying to help the communities develop and also support small businesses. So I imagine that I just rate them 5 on 10.
Okay, that sounds good.
And then for customer, that's customer services. I gave more points for McDonald's because they do have Wi-Fi and they do have cleaner facilities, and it's more friendly you find a lot of people hanging around there. So I'm just looking at some of the information that they provided on the website and the services that they offer. And also their drive-through service is quite good. So I gave them more points there.
For convenience, absolutely. This is good. These are exactly the kind of things I want you to identify. Okay, so what is important for customers that shop in the fast food market? So customers in the fast food market want convenience. They want cheap price. They want a product that's relatively good quality, and they want something that, as you rightfully said, fills their bellies. Okay, it's not meant to be a 3-course meal. It's meant to be something fast, easy to consume, and you can do that on the move. So you identify some of the good criteria. Your scores are sensible, so I can understand why you scored them. So that's good as well. And then if you were doing this in your assignment, what I would want you to then do is then justify, explain to me your logic. Tell me, and you did this as part of your explanation, is you would expand on some of those points and you would say, in the context of South Africa, this is more important to the market because X, Y, and Z. Here is the evidence. And here is why, you've scored KFC higher, you've scored McDonald's higher, looking at the fast food market. So that's perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. And what about for you doing that exercise? Do you have any feedback, or do you have anything in terms of how you found that exercise? Was it easy? Was it straightforward? Was it difficult?
And it was quite interesting in the sense that it allows you to do kind of a deeper research and understand how, how to build your competitive map. So it really gives, it's very informative, and also you get some good knowledge from it. So I really like it.
Good. I'm glad you found that. That's why I wanted to try the task, because Sometimes what happens in a lecture is you hear the lecturer and then you go away. Sometimes you forget about the model, or then you try to apply it in the assignment, and sometimes you can struggle. So doing this sometimes during the lecture gives you a chance to check your answers. It gives you a chance to understand if you've applied the model correctly. And I think you have in this context. It's really good. And I'm glad that you found that, you know, it enhanced your knowledge, it enhanced your understanding of how do you competitively profile a particular industry. How do you understand some of the factors that influence competition in a given market? So that's really good. Thank you very much for doing that exercise and sharing with us your findings. Okay.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Let's move on now to the next slide then. We'll just say that we've had a break, because that was kind of a break as well. So I'm going to, if you don't mind, skip the break. We only have another 2 or 3 slides, so it'll be easier just to move on and we can finish slightly earlier. So the next thing that's important is something that I want us to be aware of is entrepreneurial marketing. So what do you mean by that? So Bierke and Hultman in 2002 argued that entrepreneurial marketing is all about how to identify market opportunities and how to then transform resources. That can be things like knowledge, money, technology, which are usually acquired both internally, so internal to an organization through shareholders, through maybe internal investors, and how that's then used to grow the organization's network, to identify alliances, and to co-create products. Okay, so this is important. The co-creation part with entrepreneurial networks, you're identifying how to best serve your market so that you can create products that are of value to your customer. So you might be thinking, well, how do we co-create? What does that mean? Well, that means you involve other people in your design process. And who are these other people? These other people can be customers. These other people can be perhaps your staff, the frontline staff that work in the shops. Why do you want to do that? Well, firstly, customers are the ones that are going to be buying the product. So if you can involve them in the design process, already you know that you're producing something that customers desire, is something that they want. What are good examples of that? Take Nike, for example. Nike allow you to design your own trainer, design how you want the trainer to look. You can customize how you want your trainers or your sneakers to be. Why do they do that? Well, firstly, it's to give their customers a choice, the option to be able to create something unique. And that's a selling point. But secondly, Nike have identified that they can sit there and design as many trainers as they want. Some of them will do well, some of them might fail and flop. They won't produce as many sales. So rather than doing that, Nike have thought, okay, why don't we create the opportunity for our customers to actually design their own trainer? Customers feel like they've got a unique service, that they feel like Nike is giving them a unique product offering that isn't readily available in most other stores. So Nike got competitive advantage by allowing this customization. But that's also what we call entrepreneurial marketing, okay? It's a way in which Nike were co-creating the product with their customers. Nike still decided what quality of materials to use. Nike gave the customer the options to choose from. The customer wasn't able to choose their own items, their own raw materials. They still had to pick from what Nike presented them with. But the point is, it allowed the customer to be involved in a design process. And why is that useful? Because immediately you know already that at least one person wants to buy that product. That's why he or she has personalized the trainer or the sneaker to look that way. So entrepreneurial marketing is something that's becoming more and more important in today's day and age. We're seeing a lot more customization. We're seeing a lot more opportunity for personalization and customers to be involved in the journey of purchasing, creating, producing the products that they want to buy. But that's not just that on its own. Entrepreneurial marketing sits as part of a wider element of what we call social enterprise marketing mix. So what does that mean? So that means your target market is made up of a lot of different factors. If you're a business and you want to identify some of the characteristics or the features of your target market, well, there's a couple of things you need to keep in mind. Firstly, the place. How you sell your products will influence who your target market is. Are you a retailer? Are you focusing on, selling to customers? Are you maybe a wholesaler and you're selling to other businesses? Maybe that's what you do. You provide goods and services in bulk, or you provide goods and services to other businesses, so you're B2B. Are you maybe mail order? Now, mail order is dying. It's not as big as it was perhaps 20, 25 years ago, but mail order, where perhaps a catalogue comes through the post, you select what you want from the catalogue, someone collects it, you send the money or a postal check, and then a few weeks later, the product's arrived at your door. So that's mail order. Internet, so the use of IT and the use of internet to drive online sales. Direct sales, so again, do you perhaps have salesmen or saleswomen that go around people's doors selling directly to them? Do you have peer-to-peer? So again, identifying, are you selling to the end customer? Are you selling to similar peers? Are you using different methods to access your market? Multi-channel, so multi-channel usually means a combination. You sometimes see large department stores offering this type of multi-channel approach, whereby you can buy online, you can buy in store, you can buy over the telephone, you can buy using your mobile phone even nowadays. So again, there's different channels, or what they call multi-channels, to access the products and service, and that will influence who your target market is. So if you don't have internet or you don't have a social presence, then the likelihood of you being able to attract what we call Generation X or younger customers is relatively low. Nowadays, younger customers or Generation X are more likely to want to purchase online. They want to be able to access goods and services online rather than having to go into store constantly. So that's one element. Price is another element. So again, what price strategies do you have? Are you skimming prices? Are you pursuing a market penetration price strategy? Do you have psychological pricing? So psychological pricing is where, for example, rather than charging £2 for a product, you charge £1.99. So again, it's only 1 penny short of £2. However, the customer feels like they're only paying £1.99, which is less than £2, okay? So again, that's psychological pricing. It's about getting into the customer's head and thinking that they're saving money when realistically they're pretty much spending the exact same amount. Cost plus. So again, are you offering something above and beyond on top of the cost? Are you a loss leader? So what's a loss leader? That's someone that's willing to accept that they might make a loss on one product, but they know that by selling that one product, they're creating demand for another one. So what do I mean? For example, you might decide if you are producing games consoles that you will sell the actual games console at a lower price. So you might make a loss on selling your Xbox or your PlayStation, but you will then raise the price of the accessories. You raise the price of the controller, you raise the price of the headset that customers use. You perhaps look at raising the price of the games, so that the games network or the PlayStation network or the Xbox Live network, the price goes up. So again, you charge extra for the add-on services, but you make a loss on the actual core product. Again, that's a strategy that sometimes organizations will use in order to attract the target market. Different promotions, again, similar to price. Different people, again, who are your employees? How do your employees influence your business? So do you look after your employees? Do they represent your brand? Do they care about your business? Do they want to see your business do well? These are all important factors. What about your management? What's the management style in your organization like? Do your managers care for their people? Do they create the conditions, the environment for people to succeed? What's the culture like in your organization? Are people there to support each other, help each other, try to push each other on to succeed? Or are they competing against each other? Is it a toxic environment? So the culture of your organization is quite important. And finally, your customer service. So how do you interact with your customers both before and after the sales process? That will influence who your target market is and who is more likely to shop with you than not. The processes. How do your processes relate to others in your industry sector? Especially for those in services. If you're providing a service, then realistically, the process is probably the most important thing, because that's what the customer sees, that's what the customer consumes. If they're buying a service from you, essentially they're consuming a service. The physical environment can be smart, it can be run down, it can be comfortable, it can be how the facilities are. So again, does the environment in which your business operate make customers more attracted to your business? You know, if you have a high-tech environment, perhaps one that's comfortable and allows customers to come in and play. So for example, if we look at the Apple Store is designed to encourage people to come in, play with the technology, to try it for themselves, in the hope that they will then want to buy one themselves. Not all organizations are like that. Some places you walk into and you can just see the item on display. You can't touch it. You're not able to see it up close and personal. So again, that's a big difference. So Apple and their approach encourage people to be interactive. They encourage people to play around. They encourage people to want to touch and feel the device, whereas other organizations might not do that in the same way. The product itself, now this is probably one of the most important things. What about the design of your product? Who does it appeal to? You know, is it younger customers that dislike the design? Is it perhaps niche customers? So for example, maybe you're targeting the elderly with a mobile phone which has larger buttons, larger dials, so that they can see, because obviously with older age, you lose your eyesight. So again, the design of your product will impact who your customer is. The technology that you use, are you using latest cutting edge technology that will work with the big applications or the big social media companies, etc.? Are they willing to use the software that you're on? That's important. How useful is your product? That's important too. What utility does your product offer the customer? What value does it offer? The packaging with which it comes, again, is it premium packaging? Does it feel luxurious? If you're selling a Ferrari and you just drop it off my front door and post the keys in my letterbox, that doesn't feel like a Ferrari service. Whereas if you deliver my Ferrari and it's got a big bow on it, you deliver it and it's got, you know, maybe chocolates and flowers, you ring on the doorbell, you come into my house, you make small talk, you actually build up a relationship with me, then yes, I might feel like I bought a prestigious car. I bought a car that's luxurious. So again, thinking about the packaging, thinking about the delivery of your product is important. Thinking about your branding. So again, does your brand match your product style, your product range? If you are a luxurious brand, does your brand represent the luxuriousness of your product? If you're selling cheap £1 items, why do you perhaps have a luxurious looking brand? Again, you need to make sure your brand reflects on the nature of your products. And finally, the additional stuff. So what accessories do you offer with your products? What warranties are there in place so that if customer wants to return or the customer has a problem, what support channels are available to them? And these combined form what we call the social enterprise marketing mix, okay? All of these things come together to create the marketing mix. So we have here what we call the 7 Ps of marketing: place, price, promotion, people, process, physical environment, and the product itself, okay? Bringing these together creates what we call the target market. And I think that's it for today, okay? There's nothing further I wanted to cover with you guys. The focus really is on understanding our competition firstly, what our competition do, how they perform, what can we learn from them. And you can use things like Porter's 5 Forces. You can use competitor analysis, which you tried during the break. And then once you've done that exercise, is to then understand, well, based on that information, based on understanding the competition, understanding your business, how can you influence what you do to be able to reach your target market, to be able to show your target market that you are the #1 supplier, you are who they should be shopping with. And for that, you can use elements of what I talked about with entrepreneurial marketing, where perhaps you involve your customers, you get them on your side by having a co-creation led design system. Alternatively, you look at a traditional marketing mix, which is broken down to 7 Ps, and you understand how your product could be designed, could be produced, could be manufactured, could be marketed, could be supported through service in such a way that you're able to penetrate your target market and create demand for your product. And that, as I said, is the end of today's session. So thank you very much for your attention. Is there any questions you might have for me today?
Thank you. If I may say something. I think I really appreciate the entrepreneurial marketing because when it comes to the diversity and intercultural marketing, as well as companies moving to new areas or new, I think this is very useful because then it involves some of the workers who may bring, or these customers who may bring in their own cultural diversity into some of the product or services. I think this is a powerful way of dealing with diversity.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's a very important part. So if, for example, the business is currently, so you're based in South Africa. So if it's a South African business and it doesn't have much experience of, international markets, it's very much focused so far on the domestic market. If it wants to grow into, I don't know, say the UK, it wants to grow into China, it wants to grow into the USA, it might be useful to pursue entrepreneurial marketing so that they can understand the customer's needs and wants. They can understand how the culture in those countries is perhaps different and what perhaps needs to change in the business in order for it to survive or in order for it to meet the needs and the wants of those customers. So yes, that's an excellent point, Felix, absolutely. Entrepreneurial marketing can be a way for a business to learn about a new market or a new international market that they're looking to target.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay, well, thank you very much once again for your attention. And we will complete this series of lectures on Saturday morning. Okay, so I will see you all on Saturday for the final session of business functions.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you now. Bye-bye.